Hello and welcome to my very first devlog. In this video series I want to show you the development of my action strategy game Armor Platoon Leader. Since this is the very first episode, I want to show you how it all started and how I got here. So this is going to be kind of an introduction video. Hey guys, it's me, Drik Studio, and welcome to another video. If you're new to this channel, consider subscribing and turning on the notification bell, as this would really mean a lot to me. And tell me what you think of my new editing style, as I just recently changed it to make it look more professional. So I recently came up with the idea for Armor Platoon Leader. This is my first real game, and many of the things I implement here are also relatively new to me. But hopefully not only I, but also you learn something new and interesting. If you have any suggestions for the game, comment them down below, I would really appreciate that. In the game that is set in the Second World War, you command a platoon of armored tanks in real time. Real time meaning that the game does not progress incrementally in turns. This is contrasted by the turn-based games, like chess, where players take turns to move. Your tanks move on a big map with destructible objects like walls and houses, to deliver a convincing representation of World War II armored warfare. I also decided for a special look that the game should have, making it kind of unique in the World War II genre. I want it to resemble the old color footage from World War II, like the one you can see on screen right now. In World War II, most tank platoons were comprised of about 4 to 5 tanks. There are typically more tanks in medium than in heavy tank platoons. First, I try to create a minimum viable product. This is the smallest playable prototype you can make and should only include the core mechanics. If you play this prototype and the game is fun, even though there really isn't any content, that's really good. And you can easily modify these core mechanics when you just have a few lines of code, because the mechanics should really be solid. For Armor Platoon Leader, the minimum viable product is you can move units, you can let them shoot and destroy enemies. That's basically it. So now with that out of the way, I opened up a Unity 3D project and got to work. Sadly, I don't have much footage of this stage, as I forgot to record any because I didn't even really think that it would work, as I'm not very experienced at coding with C#. I first created some cubes that were to be the units and the ground cube. Then I looked into how I could implement the Navmesh. The Navmesh is Unity's built-in pathfinding component. Pathfinding is a way for the computer to find the shortest way between 2 points. I will use the Navmesh pathfinding to move the unit from their current position to the destination chosen by the player. It's actually quite simple. I used the built-in one without importing any packages though, like it was done in Brackeys tutorials. Instead, I used Table Flip Games tutorial. I added a Navmesh component to all of my units. Then I set up a game manager and a script to control the units. As I'm relatively new to Unity, I had some issues with that. In the unit controller, I tried a piece of code I found online, but it didn't work because it couldn't find the Navmesh component on the unit. So after searching for another 30 minutes, I found some code that would work. But then when running the game, the error couldn't place the agent on a Navmesh appeared. After totally not spending an hour or so trying to fix this issue, I just lowered the units so that they would be in the ground. When running, the agents would be found and the unit would be placed on top of the ground. A bit weird, I know, but it finally worked. The controls are actually very simple. Left click on a unit to select it. Left click on the ground to deselect. Right click on the ground to move the selected unit there. Right click on an enemy to let the selected unit shoot at it. For clicking and selecting, I used the Raycast, another new function I needed to learn. But it's basically like a laser pointer that you point from one point in a certain direction. The first thing that is hit by this invisible laser pointer will be returned and can then be accessed through code. To save computing power, I set the selecting up in a central game manager rather than in each and every unit. Then I implemented the shooting. This was a bit more difficult though. I first check if the player right-clicked on an enemy. Then I check if the enemy tank is in range and if my tank has a clear sightline, so no terrain features like hills or mountains are in the way, as these are indestructible objects. Then I look if my reloading time is smaller or equal to 0, so if the gun of the tank is loaded or not. Then I take a shot. If I hit the enemy tank, I compare my armor penetration value to his armor. adding a bit of randomness to the mix to determine if the tank's hull is penetrated and the tank is destroyed. If so, then I call an destroy function on the enemy tank, which replaces the enemy tank model with a destroyed version. I first tried to do this in a while loop, but that crashed my laptop, so I switched to another method where I just select the unit, then set the shooting boolean true in the click check, and then do all of the raycasting and shooting stuff in the update function that is called every frame. Also, if you want a tutorial on the mechanics, make sure to just comment down below. Then I went on to making some tank models. As I was impatient to see how the game would look like with tanks instead of cubes, I wouldn't want to learn how to work with Blender, so I opened up Tinkercad. Tinkercad is a free website application by Autodesk. Their software Autodesk Inventor is used by nearly all technical industries. I learned how to use Inventor in school, and Tinkercad has a smaller version of the Inventor integrated. So I started modeling. I first went with a relatively simple tank, the M4 Sherman, with relatively low poly count and not many vertices. Then I made a German Panzerkampfwagen 5 Panther tank, which is the Panzer 5 Panther in English. I imported both of them into Unity and made two new prefabs, a player M4 Sherman and an enemy Panther tank. I then also made a destroyed Sherman and a destroyed Panther version by sticking mesh colliders and rigid bodies on the individual tank parts. By applying the rigid body component, this object will use the built-in physics engine and act like a real thing in real life. But as the scene still looked very boring, I imported the asset Unity Particle Pack, because how Dani used to say,
just like Albert Einstein once said, if your game looks bad, just add some particles or something, it's gonna make it look better.
So then I added the explosion effects into the scene, and now whenever a tank fires or hits something, an effect is spawned. And when the tank gets destroyed, it explodes in a big explosion. As you can see, the tanks actually looked really cool firing and exploding. After successfully implementing all of this, I played around with it and it was actually really fun. So I achieved my goal for the minimum viable product. I decided to make this full game. If I complete the game, I might even release it. So if you would like to see me release the game, just comment down below. So this is it for this video. In the next one I will try to add the destructible terrain and the ability for enemies to shoot back. If you have any suggestions for the game, I would highly appreciate you writing them in the comments down below. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. Would be really great if you could even share my videos. Also check out my other videos and my Instagram and Flickr accounts, links in the description.